What's the oldest Japanese swordsmanship? Well, we're going to discuss that now. But if you would like to help me, get yourself a copy of Book of Bushido. That would really help me. It should be a pinned link at the top. Right, if I say to you, what's the oldest Japanese swordsmanship? You have to really ask what I'm asking. And the idea is, what's the oldest Japanese swordsmanship that we can still identify today? It doesn't have to be in existence today, but we can identify it and know what it is and what it looked like and what did they do and how did they move their swords. What's the oldest one? Now, most people would jump to Katori Centauri, which is very famous because, you know, it's got loads of stuff there. There's other ones like Kuroda Sensei, who has a tradition which I think goes back to the 1500s. But if you're looking at scrolls, you would probably say, oh, it's Yagyu Shinkage Ryu. The scrolls are there. We have the Imokuroku, which is, this is the life-giving sword. We have the Imokuroku there. And that is 1601. And, you know, that's the oldest one there. But actually, guys, that's not true. Not strictly true anyway. Katori Shinto Ryu has to be identifiable. We know what they do today because there's one big secret that nobody really talks about in the Koryu, and it really needs to be put out there, is that most of the lineages have changed. Not only have they slightly changed, they have drastically changed. And not only that, they change within a fraction of years. They change from each other, and we can see this by looking through the different books here. I've got Eric Shahan's book from Shinobu Books, and it shows you the different ones. One example of this is from the Shadow School of Sword, which is Eric Shahan's. Now, there is a bit of a thing with this. You have to look. So the date is 1601 and this is 1605. And can you see this guy starts with his sword there and this guy starts with it back? Now, whether they are different parts of the kata, we're not sure. They may have had the same kata, but this is just a small example of how sword schools just shift over the time. And it even happens in the West and in Europe. There's a different accounts of swordsmen who trained in the same city as people and had totally different styles of swordsmanship, even though they claim to be from the same master in the same area. So what we have to realize is that when we say what is the oldest Japanese swordsmanship that we can identify, we have to say what's the oldest Japanese swordsmanship where we know what they did. So this brings us to a lot of the famous scrolls. There's some famous scrolls that are old, quite old, and much older than this. So here we have scrolls like this, but unfortunately you get what's called a mokuroku. Again, from Eric's book, this is an example of a mokuroku. It basically means list. And for those people, this is actually in probably Sosho, which is cursive writing. It's just a list of names. That's it. Right punch, left punch, above punch, you know. And you could think you could get, oh, that, you know, you could get some idea of that. But most of the time they have esoteric names. So, like, the names tend to be, they deal with esoteric things like the auspicious knowledge tengu. So let's do the auspicious knowledge tengu technique. Yep, it doesn't even say, is it left, right punch? So when we look at scrolls that are this old, we have to say, hold on a minute, it's an old scroll, it's Japanese swordsmanship, but it isn't really telling us what the Japanese did. So we can't class that as the right date. So here in this book, we've got, for example, this one comes from 1561. 1561, if you don't know, is right in the time of the Japanese, you know, wars. If you're doing swordsmanship in 1561, which means you've probably been trained in the 1550s, you are in the heart of real battle. Surely this is an amazing scroll to tell us exactly how samurai fought. So let's have a look at that scroll. So 1561, there's the scroll, and that's it, and that's the full translation. It's just a name. Empi, leaping monkey. Yep, circling monkey. Shadow of the mountain, moon and shadow, float like a boat. They don't tell us really how swordsmanship works. We can glimpse the slightest bit, but it doesn't tell us. So we're in our quest of trying to find the oldest Japanese swordsmanship. We have to say, actually, it's not so old. It's quite difficult to get something that we confirm has not changed from that date. So like I say, if you've got Katori Centauri, it's an amazing school, but we can't confirm how close the kata are to the 1500s. They may have vastly changed. They may not have changed. We just don't know. But I do know there are variations, not so many, but there are variations in the Katori Centauri. So what is it then? Most people would jump to this, which is, Eric's already done it in here. He's done another copy, but the full translation is in the Life-Giving Sword, and it's the Imokuroku there. Yep. Now this is from 1661. Now the images were originally drawn in 1661, and the titles were. So you think, okay, it's got images, it tells us what to do, we've got a translation, we've got the titles. Okay, 1661 is the earliest date. Not so. This is 1707. This date for this description is 1707. So without that description, all you have is something like that. Do this, the same thing. So circling monkey, mountains and shadow. It's the description that tells us what exactly to do. So the earliest one so far is 1707. However, and this is where Eric Shahan's done an amazing job, there is a scroll in the back of his new book. I say new, it's the new book I've got of his anyway. I try to get all of Eric's books that I like. He does too many outside of my remit. But we've got this, the Japanese pirate sword. Now, Chinese. So you're going to say, Anthony, what do you possibly mean to show me some Chinese guys doing swordsmanship in a very Chinesey way? And that's the oldest Japanese swordsmanship. The answer is this. This was written in 1612, yeah? 1612 by a Chinese man. Now this Chinese man had studied from another Chinese man. They were all in mainland China, but he used a katana. Well, actually, he used a tachi. You can tell. He uses the kanji for sword, but he doesn't realise that what he's actually got is a tachi, and it's 5 feet long. It's a nodachi, it's massive, and it's Japanese. And he talks about, he says, this is a Japanese sword. He said, my master was Chinese, but his master was Japanese, and his master was a Japanese fighter who studied, a samurai basically, or a Japanese fighter of some form. We can't guarantee he was a samurai, but he was a swordsman, and he must have been in the 1500s. So here we have a Chinese man who actually describes Japanese swordsmanship in the early 1600s, 1612, but we know he's been practicing, and there is information on him. There's quite a lot of information on him, and he does a lot of traveling around China to find the best swordsman. And there's actually a couple, at least 2 samurai sword schools in China, right, who are being done by the Chinese. So here we have a description and we have illustrations, even though it was designed for Chinese troops. So there are some elements of change, but he says in his introduction, he says, listen, this is what I learned off my master. I went to another school and they had a lesser understanding, but my master had a deeper understanding of the Japanese way of the sword and how the Japanese fight and how the Japanese pirates fight. So that's how it happens. The samurai fight like this when they come to China, because we think of the word pirate and think, oh, it's not samurai. Most samurai were pirates. Pirates is a very sort of complex term, because you've got an idea in your head and then there's what there really is, and then what every pirate doesn't think he's a pirate. He's a buccaneer, he's a privateer, and all these things. But the other people are pirates. It's like a freedom fighter versus a terrorist. What's the difference between a freedom fighter and a terrorist? Very little, depending on, the terrorists will say they're a freedom fighter and the government would say they're a terrorist. You see what I'm saying? So the oldest type of samurai swordsmanship I can find at the minute, by that I mean it has a description of what happens, we can recreate it, it's there, is a 1612 scroll by a Chinese man. Now that might not be this is my beginning of my research into this, so we'll go deeper and deeper, but it's an excellent one. I recommend, there's actually another book called the Pirate Sword, the Complete Scroll, so you can either get this one or get that one, and I'll put it on the screen. And I'm going to be following this, and we're going to hopefully bring this to life for you alongside other swordsmanship. And I'm using dead swordsmanship because of a simple reason. Swordsmanship, in my opinion, and I think I am correct in saying has changed so much that it no longer could be said to represent swordsmanship from the Sengoku period, the warring period, when we know. So there's a couple of facts here we know in the Edo period, the peace period, swordsmanship took a bit of a weird turn. It went very flowery, it went very zen. Nobody denies that. It took a very formulaic. It was affected by the Showa period. It was affected by post-war Japan. And we know it's changed in its basic essence. So what we have to do is go back to the earliest ones. And I'm going to try and bring them out for you with the help of Eric and people like that, and all the different people I'm involved with. And we're going to try and recreate this type of stuff and bring it for you. And hopefully create some sort of course that you can do and get involved with, so you can go through the full course. What do you think, guys? Leave a comment in the comment section below. Let's open a dialogue on the real Japanese swordsmanship, and not what we think Japanese swordsmanship is.